I want it. It didn't let me tell it where I want it to go. Okay.
Don't you love tech? Oh no. All righty. Well, good afternoon, morning, night, wherever you are, and whenever you're listening to this podcast episode. I would like to just introduce myself and my co-host. I'm Rachael Woosley, and my co-host Diamond Drip. We're so excited, and this is kind of going to be an interesting, just like introduction for us, because I've had podcasts off and on, and mainly have done them interview style, and I've absolutely loved that. But I was feeling in my journey that there was something more that needed to happen with the podcast, and so I'd actually kind of like shelved it for a while, and was putting out a couple of episodes here and there, and not being very consistent. I'll be completely honest. And I was like, I know that there's something more, and I kept kind of just pursuing it, was meditating on it, and really not getting any answers. And then one day I was meditating, and I was like, okay, if I was supposed to do this, and like put the person in my mind that's supposed to help me with this, because I knew that I wanted a co-host. That's what I felt like was missing for me. And I was like, okay, who is it? So I sat down to do the whole meditation, set my intention, everything. And the whole time I'm doing that meditation, Diamond's face just came popping into my head. And I had done an interview with her, and I'm going to kind of like tell on her a little bit, because her hair used to be purple and the background was purple. And that's really what I saw, was just her face and this aura of purple around her. So if you're watching the video, you'll see my hands. But like she just had this whole aura about her in purple, and that's my favorite color anyways. So I was like, Diamond, like at first I was kind of like, Diamond, like I didn't know who to expect, but I don't know that I was expecting you. But I was like, okay, go with that. And so I actually like set on it for probably a week or two, because I was like, really? And every time I kept asking, Diamond was the person, and I thought, I'm just going to ask her, like randomly ask her. So I had met Diamond probably about a year ago. I think so.
I think so.
We were networking online, just connected. I loved her. I just loved her vibrance. Like she has this, well, when she had her purple hair and all that, she's had many colors of hair since I met her, but like, I just remember the purple, but she was this like magnetic personality. And so when we decided to have a conversation, because we're completely on opposite spectrums of the United States, we decided to have a conversation one day, and I was like, this is one cool chick here, and I was like, I really liked having the conversation with her. So when I reached out to her, I just literally went on LinkedIn and I said, hey, we haven't talked in a while, but I've been thinking about you because I want to do this podcast. Would you be something you would consider? So we've had several conversations about it, and we just decided to go with it. So as you really kind of paid attention at the beginning, I didn't even give you a title because we don't have one yet as of recording this. So it's been kind of fun, because we've just been talking about, like, we know that this is something we're supposed to do. We know this is something that we're supposed to share, not only for our listeners, but for ourselves as well. Just having the discussion and having the dialogue and the discourse about some of the things that we're going through in our own lives, but also some of the things that we're seeing with our clients, with our friends, with our neighbors, and just in society in general. So I want to welcome Diamond to the podcast, and I'm so excited that you said yes to this interesting journey that we're on. So I'm going to let you introduce yourself and just share what you feel like sharing. So
thank you, Rachael. So yes, I am Diamond Drip. And it's been so interesting to hear you recap our journey together, because when we met, you were one of the only spiritual entrepreneurs that was in my network at the time. And so we connected just simply off the fact that we see past what this world is telling us, what our senses are telling us is real. And it's crazy because timing is everything. I wasn't nearly as into the spirituality piece back then when we met as I am now. I was very much into mindset, but spirituality came later. And so when you reached out and said that source was showing showing my face to you, you were the second person who told me that. The other one was for a business partnership. And it's one of those things where I was in a place to receive that. I was in a place to receive that source was showing my face. And I'm just over here on the other side of the country, like, oh yeah. And like you, I had a podcast, and it was one of those things where I put restraints on myself so that the podcast would be like very concise and to the point. And over time, that just wasn't sustainable. Like I was trying to figure out, what do we talk about? And so when we had that first meeting after the LinkedIn message, and you were like, we really just want to get deep. We want to talk about the stuff that nobody is talking about. We all have these masks on, and a lot of it is driven by the ego. And so when you said that this would be an opportunity for us to really just take off the mask and share with what's going on, like what's going on with us, what's our business, with our clients, and just really break that whole illusion that, just because you're an entrepreneur, everything's great. Like people know entrepreneurship is hard. People know that building a spiritual business is not easy, especially with the rise in scams that are happening out there. And so it's one of those things when you find a genuine person and you can have these genuine conversations and really just let it out and let other people know that they're not alone in what they're experiencing, whether that's trauma, whether that's growing the business, whether that's mindset, whether that's believing in the 5D, like knowing that you're not alone is so, so helpful. So I'm excited for the journey. And it's one of those things where I feel like if we would have planned every exact detail, like something would have gone wrong somehow, because the universe, when we make plans, the universe, especially like if we're thinking a lot with our minds and not with what we feel, the universe is like, ha, you made a plan. That's cute. It's like, versus actually just going with the flow and going with what feels right. So I'm so excited.
That is so awesome that you shared that, because prior to us getting on here, we both are entrepreneurs. So I'll let our audience know that, but we both like have been moving into this spiritual space more so because we've had very 3D or earthbound type positions or businesses that we've ran. And so when you're switching to this different like ideology of business and it's more in this feminine space, and most business is taught in a very masculine space, you're sitting here and you're like just kind of balance this balancing act. And there, for us, like when we initially talked, we were talking about how sometimes we are faced with this constant like juggling of what do we do, because we are spiritual entrepreneurs, but we have to pay taxes. We have to do, you have to deal with the accountant. You got to deal with the tech. You got to deal, you got to deal with the websites. You got to deal, with the murkiness of all that is business in, the reality that we live in. And so when it comes to like expressing ourselves and really talking about the day-to-day, the ins and the outs, sometimes even as spiritual entrepreneurs, we get kind of pie in the sky and it all looks like, I always joke, like rainbows and unicorns, and it's not. And there's a lot of things that happen behind the scenes. And so when we were chatting, that was one of the things that really encouraged me, was that we could have dialogue and discourse, and we are vastly different in ages. We live on opposite sides of the country. Like there's all of these things that are so like interesting about how we came about. And that was a funny thing when I asked Source for it, and that's that unplanning that really is, because I'm a super planner. Like if anybody has known me in the past, like I am such a super planner, and I'm like plan months and months out, but I don't always get those plans implemented because Source is like, that's not what I wanted, you know? And it's even like, I was like, we got to have a name for this. We got to have a direction. And none of that has come to us at this point in time that we're recording. And for the first time in my existence, I'm getting comfortable with that. Like not having a plan is kind of a weird thing to me. I'm like, you know what? Not having a plan makes you open to hearing what source has to say. So when Diamond came up, I was like, really? Like, I didn't, not that I questioned source, but I was like, wow, the purple, like I knew instantly when the purple came to my mind, I knew it was you. Like before the face even popped up, I was like, oh, the purple, I know it's her. And I was like, oh, this is going to be so much fun because we're going to be able to share with our audience some of those ins and outs that sometimes in the spiritual community, we just want to make all light and love and rainbows and all those kinds of things. And they're not always those things because there's stuff that happens in the background. And so I think it would be fun to help each other pull those masks off. And you know, we were talking about that earlier because we use different modalities and tools, and we were kind of discussing that prior, how we read each other's charts and things like that. And we'll discuss that on the podcast. So if you're listening and you're like, what the heck is this crazy woman talking about? We'll talk about those things in the upcoming episodes and a lot more, but we just found like some of our things were so like interesting how we kind of like reflect each other in a very different space. And we'll be able to see that as we come through the podcast. And I'm super excited about that because it's just going to be a fun discourse of life and how we in our own spaces and in our own time in where we are in life, how we're dealing with that and how that looks and how that functions. Because for everybody, it's different. And to be able to journey along on this journey with you is going to be super fun with that. So to all of our listeners, we hope that you stay tuned to whatever source has planned for us on this podcast, because we don't know. And all we know is we're just going to have fun dialoguing, having discourse, talking about the real, the raw, the beautiful, sometimes and not so pretty parts of being women, being business owners, being spiritual entrepreneurs, and all the things in between. So to our listeners, we hope to see you on the next episode, and we're super excited to begin this journey with you. So until then, just make sure that you like, subscribe, whatever button is there for you to follow us on this journey. We hope that you'll push that button and share this episode with somebody you know who needs to hear it. So for that, we're going to say goodbye, and we'll see you on the next episode.